I'm ready when y'all are.
All right. All right, guys. So we're going into Q2 of this year, and we are changing our give back recipient. It is going to be Folds of Honor for the next 2 quarters. So Q2 and Q3 of this year, we are doing ground beef back to Folds of Honor for an event coming up in September for them. So with that being said, I've got a pretty cool guest sitting next to me. It's my big sister, Colleen Katzenberger. Colleen, you want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. First, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support to Folds of Honor. So I am one of Patrick's older sisters. He's blessed to have 3 of us, and I'm the youngest of the sisters. I think I always like it most when our story collides. I'll use that verbiage because Pat and I definitely grieved the same amazing American hero. He got to be my husband, Patrick's brother-in-law, Jeremy. So it's always kind of fun when I feel like we sit down and start talking about it, because the fun part about stories is perspective. In a lot of ways, you and I have similar yet very different perspectives. Yeah.
And it's been, 12 years?
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years that we're coming up on here in June, and I was like thinking about this when I asked you to do this. I was like, how have we never done? Obviously, we've had a lot of drinks together and discussed the events that happened.
Lots
But
of
like, how have we?
coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of coffee. Exactly. And you don't drink. But I can't believe we never sat down and had a conversation like this. And we both told our stories a lot separately.
Yeah.
But we've never sat down and done this. So with that being said, I think my first and probably most important question is, who is your favorite brother?
Oh, gosh. It's actually a kind of hard one.
Yeah.
Good thing I just have one.
Yeah.
It's you. You're my favorite brother.
Everett was pretty excited about that question. So.
Yes, it is. I think about that in a weird way, because I was thinking about this when I was driving here. Because when I think you met Jeremy?
So I think I do.
Okay. I wonder, when do you think it was?
In the basement. You brought him over to Mom
you're
and Dad's
right.
house.
I actually think you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
I think he was in BDUs or something like that, because he just gotten done with ROTC event. And I was like,
Maybe. I remember bringing him to your 8th grade choir concert at Lakeview.
You can't tell the audience that I was in choir.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was your 8th grade choir concert. Yeah. And so there was this part of me that thinks about it, because you were in 8th grade when Jeremy and I started dating.
Yeah.
And then we had our crazy romance of a story. And I moved away within a year and a half.
Yep. I was a freshman when you guys got married.
Yeah. And you finished growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of missed those years with you. It was a weird thought. But you are my favorite brother, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about what is Folds of Honor? What does it do for you personally, and what does it do nationally?
Yeah. So, those are 2 really loaded questions.
Yes.
So I'll start with nationally.
Okay.
So Folds of Honor is a really wonderful non-for-profit organization that provides scholarships to the spouses and the children of severely wounded or killed in action service members and now first responders. So they just expanded this past fall to include first responders to those eligible. So as far as nonprofits go, I've been with Folds of Honor since 2015 and have watched them really, really grow, and have a lot of pride in their ability to keep the mission at the forefront. Educate the legacy, honor the sacrifice is their mission, always has been. And they have maintained and over 90% goes back to scholarships. So this past year just came out, 92 cents of every dollar goes back to a scholarship. And they maintain that level pretty much consistently as far as a nonprofit goes. 45,000 scholarships have been provided over the years.
It's amazing.
And it's for children and spouses. So children, it can be for private schools, which I think is nice, because a lot of times, unfortunately, in military towns, the school districts tend to not be the best.
Right.
And so, especially in the middle of grief, or things when maybe you don't want to live on base anymore and you're off post and you're looking for good schools, it really opens up some good options for your kids. and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, scholarships is the forefront. Me personally, Folds of Honor is almost...
Well, maybe before we get
Okay,
into that,
yeah.
like backtrack on your story a little
Okay.
bit, and like let's start. Okay, so you and Jeremy got married my freshman year of high school.
Yes.
Let's start there.
We're going way back.
Yeah, we're going way back.
Way back, okay.
So tell the audience like a little bit about like who was Jeremy, who was he to you. Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, I love it. So Jeremy and I met when we were 16 years old, lifeguarding at our local country club. And it is one of those memories that is very much ingrained in my head of him rounding the corner at the lifeguard shack with these beautiful blue eyes, broad shoulder, blonde hair.
He was a hottie.
He was so hot.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend rounded the corner right behind him. Wah, wah. And so that summer we met, I just got to know him, and his girlfriend was great. She was really nice. And so we went to sister high schools, and so our paths just kept crossing. And then that first year of college, he needed a date for dining in a ROTC function, and I needed a date for sorority formal. And you know, that good old AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
I don't.
AIM.
Did you even use that?
Come on.
Okay. AOL Instant Messenger. We were like chatting back and forth, and we'd been talking a lot because this was the first time in our friendship that both of us were single at the same time.
Yeah.
And he finally types to me, "I'll go with you to yours if you go with me to mine." And I remember typing back, "Deal." Of course. Oh my God. And you know, when I talk about it, it's like I just remember Jeremy and I had our first date, and we were both we were like a signed deal at that point. Like we just knew. You like hear about that, and we got to experience it, you know. And I feel like anybody that really knew us and watched that whole thing unfold saw that happening. And so when I think about it, he was my best friend.
Yeah.
And he finished college that first year and hated it, you know, just...
I can relate.
Yeah, hated it, wasn't ready for it, really just wanted to serve in the military. And so I didn't sign anything. He enlisted that summer when we were dating. And so at that point, we hadn't even been together a year. That's so weird to think about.
Yeah.
And so he enlisted with a Ranger contract and delayed entry, left in October of 2004. And I was a mess when he left.
I remember.
I was like, I was a mess. I was in my second year of college. Because just, you know, we didn't grow up in a military family.
Yeah.
So like my whole concept was Black Hawk Down, and we all know how that movie went.
There really needs to be another movie about Rangers besides Black Hawk Down.
It really would be helpful. And so, like, I just was so scared and unknown, and even just everybody talks about how the military changes people, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
I knew who I was sending off, but I had absolutely no idea who was going to come home, right? And so, and in the midst of it, I'm in my second year of college, on track to get my bachelor's of nursing, and just growing up. We were busy growing up, right? And I wrote letters every single day to him, and I still have all those letters. And before he left, we had talked about getting married. I feel like I told you that. Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we talked about that, yeah.
And I kept it kind of secret with a lot of people. And then
I thought you were crazy.
What?
I thought you were crazy. I was like 14. I was like, you shouldn't know. What, you're getting married?
I know. Well, I mean, I think of it now, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a little crazy.
But at the same time, like, you guys had one of the coolest love stories, like, to date that I've ever seen. So, like, growing up watching that all unfold was amazing. So.
Oh, thanks, bro.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, but it was, I think of it because before he left, I told him I couldn't get married, that I was too young, I needed to finish college, all the logical reasons to not get married at 19, right? Then he came home for Exodus, and oh my gosh, I loved the man even more than I did before he left. Like, it was like crazy. I think there was something about, you know, we did love each other so much, but almost like that distance apart when he was in basic and I was still in school, where we grew independently, but still came back to each other. that might have been a little bit of what like kept us so strong, if that makes any sense. Like,
Well, then, like, what an important quality to have in, like, a military relationship, because you do spend a lot of time apart from each other, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so just the confidence that both of us grew individually. And anyways, then it was like so magical, but then he left again. It's funny the way that works in the military. And, and it was good. And he had more contact after that point. But then I went down for his airborne graduation. And that was like I remember so much that weekend so very clearly. And I remember when I left, he was getting ready to sign into RIP. Back when it was hard.
Yeah,
before,
I wouldn't know. I was the
before it
first
was
class
RASP.
in RASP.
And he was like terrified, and I was terrified for him. And I just kept thinking to myself, he's 3 weeks, right? Was it, or 4 weeks? I can't.
Yeah, back then it was 3 weeks.
3 weeks away from like really embarking on this journey, and he's going to be alone.
Yeah.
And it like devastated me.
Yeah.
And so, I went down for his RIP graduation like 3 weeks later, and he had been so funny during that time. So let me rewind. So I get home back to Kansas City. I cried the entire time home. I get back to my dorm, and he calls before he signs in at RIP, and I'm like, oh my God, we should get married. We should do it. I know I said no. I know I said I couldn't do it, but I changed my mind, and we should do it. And he was like, I gotta go sign in. I was like, okay. And then it was like minimal contact, but every time he would call, he was like so awkward. And so I was like, oh my God, he's either gonna break up with me or he's gonna propose. Thank God he proposed.
Yeah.
It was on your birthday, wasn't it?
Yeah, the weekend before my birthday. That was right after he graduated RIP?
Yeah, we got married, and then I'd like flown down.
Because that was for his RIP graduation.
Yes, because it was airborne, I decided I needed to marry him.
Yeah, yeah.
It was RIP that we got engaged.
Yep.
And then it was 16 days later we got married.
Yep. And his first deployment was...
Well, and that was like the ironic part, was he like got to battalion, first battalion, 75th, and they were going on leave, and in all his rookie cherryness, he thought it was the pre-deployment leave, and it was the coming home leave.
That's right.
So he called me and been like, we got to get married now or after my first deployment, which ended up not being true. But in some weird way, that worked out really good, because then we got those 6 months.
Maybe it was entrapment on his part. Smart man, if that was the case. It's like, oh, I'm deploying in a couple weeks. We got to get married.
He really wanted that BAH.
Just saying. A couple weeks in the barracks will do it to most folks.
Could see that, yeah. Yeah, sorry. I mean, you told me to start at the beginning. Like,
no.
Where do you want me to fill in there?
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so you guys get married.
Yeah. So I transferred nursing schools.
Yep.
Had to take a semester off. That was one of the big things with our parents, was they were very adamant I finish school, and I wanted to. I wanted to be. I was on track to be a nurse. Really wanted to be a nurse, and so those first couple of years, Jeremy was busy figuring out how to be a ranger, and I was busy learning to be a nurse. And I think of it now. We were so broke. Oh my God, we were so broke. Like, I think of it, and we lived our apartment complex was across from Sonic, and like, I have such fond memories of that stage of my life.
Yeah.
Like, as challenging as it was, like financially, and the constant in and out on his part, like, oh my God, I got to be with my best friend.
Yeah.
And we finished growing up together, and we figured out, I mean, it wasn't always perfect, but it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And, he was on his deployment schedule, gone for 3, home for 6, just constantly in that rotation. And then when I finished school in 2007, he got his E5, and we felt like we had like won the lottery. And so we bought a house, blah, blah, blah. After you buy a house, and you start thinking about kids. And so, 2010, we got to welcome Everett into our lives.
Yep.
Rocked our world in
Yep.
the most beautiful way. We had four beautiful months together of a family of 3.
Yep.
And then he deployed. My last deployment, March of 2011.
Yep. All right, so
Just like spit out the end.
Yeah.
Kind of rushed through all that.
yeah,
but-
you really just kind of spit up there. Okay, so we have Everett in October. You guys have Everett. That'd be weird if I was involved.
It wouldn't be.
We'll go ahead and cut that part out.
So weird. You did come visit with your shaved head.
No, I did.
Yeah.
I came. So at this point, I'll tie in a little bit of my story here. So
Do you want me to ask you questions back?
no,
Okay.
but you can if you want. Okay, so at this point, you got pregnant with Everett right as I was going in the Army, right? Is that right? Or a couple months after I got to basic? I got in the Army, yeah.
So we would have found out we were pregnant in February. I remember it was Super Bowl weekend of 2010.
Yeah, so a couple months before I left for
Yeah.
the military. Okay, so yeah.
Did you do a delayed entry too?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I left for the Army July 7th, 2010. All right, so I came down, I met Everett for the first time right after I graduated basic training. And here's a good small tidbit. It's a great little Army story that we can either keep or not. But I remember when I was down there, I asked him, I was like, all right, so how does it work when I graduate airborne school? How are the RASP instructors going to come attack me, right? And he's like, here's how it's all going to play out. And so I'm thinking through how I can do things smarter. And like me and 4 of my Ranger buddies were all like, all right, we're going to have one bag and we're going to throw all my stuff in my car, because I was like one of the only people that had a car,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because I don't want to ruin too much for future recruits going into the 75th Ranger Regiment.
I'm sure it's all exactly the same way too, as it was like.
It might be, because it played out
years ago.
almost the way you said it was going to. But you run from airborne school to the RAS barracks and you carry everything you own on that run. And it's like, I think just shy of like 2 miles. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna do this really smart. I'm gonna have like a 10-pound assault bag that I just throw on my shoulder. And so I had like 4 sea bags that I did not like pack any of them properly, and I just threw them all in my car. And then all my buddies threw all their stuff in their car. Well, they did POV, personally owned vehicle inspections right before we took off on the run. And
They found them.
yeah, the instructor's like, what are you, a medic or something? Why do you have 40 bags in your car? And I was like, those are all my buddies. And so then, like, not only did I have to carry all my stuff, but none of it was packed properly. So I lost my Class A's on the run to the RAS barracks, and I was like, dang it, I was so close.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yep. So yeah, I remember coming down and spending a couple days with you guys when because we ended up not starting our RAS class until January. So like, I remember coming down for a long weekend with a couple of my friends. It's when we baptized Everett.
Yeah.
And so I just remember like the last thing Jeremy said to me as I was leaving is like, you got this, but don't come back here without a Ranger scroll. I was like, roger that.
A slot for Ranger School.
No, a Ranger scroll.
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 Got it.
Yeah. And so I just remember that being like one of the last things he said to me. I was like, all right, I'll freaking roger that. So Jeremy left on a deployment a couple weeks after I started RASP.
Yes. Yeah, because he left March 6th.
Yep.
I don't know. I remember that.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to the more depressing part. For folks that don't know, like, Colleen and I have talked about this a lot, and morbidity and humor about morbidity is just part of like the veteran culture. So if we seem callous or anything like that, it's just,
I'll probably still cry though.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is totally fine. You can do whatever you want. All right, so Jeremy takes off on that deployment a few weeks into March of 2011.
Yeah.
And that was a busy time for First Bat. We were kind of winding down on Iraq, and we were really surging forward on Afghanistan at that point. And he was doing a pretty cool mission set.
His company went early.
His company went early.
They had surged, and so this was going to be his only 6-month deployment. So it was the first deployment where we had Everett, and it was going to be the first one that was 6 months compared to the 3 months.
Yep. All right, so I graduate RASP in April of 2011.
Yes, because we went.
No, it would have been March because I was there for St. Patty's Day,
Okay.
which is today.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Love
and so I graduate, I head down to First Bat, and we rip out on that deployment in May.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so we go about a month into it, and I get the news that Jeremy is killed in action. He's killed in a firefight in Paktika province. I want to hear more about your side. Obviously, I know my side pretty well. So tell me what that was like for you on your end.
Hell.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's like, it's funny the memories that are so clear, and then the other memories that are not even, and I even question the validity of them sometimes, if that makes any sense. But it's interesting to me because, Jeremy deployed in March, and in true Ranger wife fashion, I mean, I was completely devastated when he left for that deployment. Like, I remember the night that he left, clear as day. I can picture it. I can feel the last hug, kiss on my forehead. I can watch him walking away, and him and I both had a terrible premonition about that deployment. Terrible, but you can't harp on that.
Yeah.
And so went home and figured out how to do it without him. Switched careers as a nurse. I had became a labor and delivery nurse. All the things were coming together. Him and I were figuring it out as far as me keeping him up to date on Everett and all the changes developmentally. And I was coming off orientation as a labor and delivery nurse, and so I booked a trip back to Kansas City to visit our families. Because both Jeremy and I were from the Kansas City area, so sometimes it was just easier for me to travel than it was to host everybody. And so again, we traveled back to Kansas City, and I know we've talked about this, but I sometimes have such tremendous guilt for the people that loved me, how they carried such weight that day for all the things to come into place the way I needed them to. It was so when you travel as a military spouse and your spouse is overseas, you give the FRG an address of where you're staying in case they have to notify you. And the only reason they notify you in person is for a death notification. Anybody in the community knows that, or direct community, I should say. So, I had given them mom and dad's address, and I had an early flight home on June 14th. So mom and dad took me to the airport, and they get home from the airport, and the men in uniform show up at mom and dad's house, which at that time you had deployed also. And so thank God they didn't process that the only reason people would come to the door is for a death notification. In some ways, thank God for that.
Yeah.
And, they answer the door and they ask for me. And this is 9 o'clock in the morning, I feel like is what they say, early.
Yeah.
Early in the day. And, my dad is she's literally probably in that plane flying over our head. And we just took her to the airport. And they wouldn't give mom or dad any information. So I'm in the air from Kansas City to Atlanta is where my layover had been. And, it's nerve-wracking enough flying with an infant by yourself, and so I was doing all the things and
kudos to you.
Being super brave about it and had totally practiced collapsing the stroller with one arm and, get into Atlanta and I'm handling all the things. And I remember calling, my flight was delayed from Atlanta to Savannah. I get off and right away it's delayed. I call mom and dad, and dad answers and I tell him the flight's delayed, and he just kind of loses his temper about airlines and, typical dad. And I just remember being wow, this is a really big reaction. We're fine. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then called Katie.
Yeah.
Katie Peevely was my best friend, and she had even been watching Everett for me during my 12-hour shifts and was picking me up from the airport in Savannah. So I call her to let her know. And she's like super high strung on the phone in her answer. She's like, oh, I'm sure everything's going to work out. And she's like, Will's going to be with me at the airport. And Will, her husband, you know, Jeremy and I's really good friends. He had been shot on the deployment before. And so he was home recovering from that. And turns out they knew. For all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I, you know, so when they couldn't notify me at mom and dad's, like kind of that panic email went back out to all the guys about the mission, and even had said in there to specifically not say anything to the Peebleys.
Yeah.
When, ironically, I had dinner with them the night before I came to Kansas City, and we were just talking about things, and I had said, I like looked Will in the eye, and I had said, if you ever find out about anything happening to Jeremy before me, I fully expect you to get your wife to be by my side when I find out. Like, said, communicated.
Yep.
There was no doubt in that moment. So he did that. He did exactly what I needed him to do. But the burden of that, again, Katie and Will knew not long, but long enough, carried that weight without me knowing. Somewhere in that mix, you knew probably before any of those people. Here I am, just playing on the floor of the airport with Everett, making sure it's all happening the way it's supposed to. And I remember being on the standby list for a flight and having a guaranteed seat on the following flight back to Savannah. And I know all the phone calls that were happening behind the scenes to get me back into Savannah, because Katie, thank God, had advocated that there was no way they were going to tell me in the Atlanta airport, because I think at one point that was talked about.
I have no doubt.
And she was like, no way are you telling her that news and then expecting her to get on a plane by herself with her 7-month-old infant. Absolutely not. Thank you, Katie. And so, you know, I'm the first one caught off the standby list. And I remember feeling like everything's coming together, like it's fine. And I was supposed to do my first shift by myself the next day as a labor and delivery nurse, and, you know, just all the excitement of that. And I did that quick little flight back to Savannah. I remember the smell. It's like a weird piece of it. Savannah has such a distinct smell when you touch down, and Everett was asleep on my chest, and he was in a Bjorn, and I walked down the walkway of the Savannah airport to Katie, who gave me a two-handed wave and a big smile, because she had been highly instructed not to give off any sort of indication. I mean, I was clueless. Yeah. Clueless. I got pulled into a conference room in the Savannah airport where there were 2 men in uniform. Being the optimist that I am, thought I had won like military spouse of the year or something. Like it was going to be good, because they would only find you at your house for a death notification. I was not at my house. But I took one look at Katie, and I knew it wasn't good. She also has big blue eyes, and in those eyes were lots of tears. And I remember saying, oh God, this isn't good. She just shook her head. And then I said, oh my God, is it my husband or is it my brother? And she had been fully, like, she was not allowed to say anything. And so she just kept like shaking her head. So I looked at the men and I was like, oh my God, is it my husband or is it my brother? And, you know, in true men fashion, they tried to tell me to calm down and sat me on a couch in the corner of the room, where he knelt on the floor and read the line on behalf of the United States President. We regret to inform you that Jeremy, Staff Sergeant Jeremy A., that's all I needed to hear. I knew who it was at that point. Curled up in a ball. I wish Katie was here to tell this part of the story. She tells it really well. Curled up in a ball. Really felt like my world ended. And across the room was this 7-month-old baby. Made a noise. I was fully much remembered my life was not over. So I sat up, took a deep breath. I looked at those men in uniform and I asked them what I needed to do. Because in true military fashion, there were a million things I needed to do.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you were living your own hell.
Definitely. So how long was it before I talked to you after all that transpired?
God, that I don't even remember.
Me neither.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like the bird had already left to Germany for Dover because there was such a delay in notifying me, and you were with Jeremy.
Yeah, I didn't talk to you till I was in Germany.
And so you were in air. And then there was like the whole panic of like getting me to Dover.
Yeah.
Which, oh my God.
Yeah. Story for a different day.
Different. But you know, like, so, because I'm pretty sure you were already in the air.
Yeah.
So it was a hot minute. And then I was traveling, like, I don't know, I just remember seeing you in Dover.
So I don't like that whole experience from that terrible point in the Savannah airport to, I don't know, we'll give you a month and a half afterwards. I know for me personally, there's like a lot of things I look back on, like it was it changed my life, but I also look back and there's like a couple really cool things I remember of just like the incredible capability for like human kindness.
Oh my God, yes.
So I've always like, I know I have my couple examples, but I'm curious, like, what do you remember specifically from like those few weeks of like, I mean, and you have a lot, but.
I like strangely think about the meals.
Yeah.
Like two pieces, edible arrangements and the meals. Because, I mean, we were in Savannah, Georgia, and people in the South grieve with food.
Yep.
100%, which is like fantastic.
Yeah.
But you know, that meal train got put out, and like, I don't think I cooked for like 3 or 4 months.
At least.
And like, we had like the second refrigerator was bought for me to store food.
Yeah.
And just how quickly some of that got orchestrated. I don't know why that's. Like Katie and Mom were fantastic at undoing edible arrangements. They would get delivered to the house, and they could like so that we could store all the fruit.
Right.
And I mean, it was really appreciated.
Yep.
I remember that strangely. I remember time with you.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of some of those really odd moments in that first month of trying to figure out what my new normal was.
Yeah.
And you moved in.
Yeah.
Was it like right away? I can't really remember.
Yeah. I mean,
I think so. I think it like, yeah.
Because
got back from the funeral and.
Yeah. Well, even before that, like I think I came back and I just came straight to your house. I think I literally got off my flight after, I flew into Dover and then.
Yeah, we hooked up in Dover.
And then we flew back together. Yeah.
It's funny, like I remember too. I was still nursing Everett, and I had never set out to nurse for a full year. I don't know, maybe the nurse in me was very realistic as much as I knew it was better, but how hard breastfeeding can be. And in some weird way, it's another thing where I feel like God orchestrated that so I could have those really intimate, private moments that I needed. Because everybody surrounded me in such love, which was amazing.
Also suffocating.
Also exhausting.
Yeah.
Because I also just really needed to be sad.
Yeah.
Needed that space to be sad, and I didn't always feel like I had it. I think you and I felt like we had it when we were together. Maybe I felt that more than you did. I think, look back on it now, you were being really strong for me. But
Thank you. I know. Yeah.
You told him we were gonna like tell all these jokes. It's been such a serious conversation.
No, it has been pretty serious. I was gonna look on here for one of my jokes and I have written down, but all right. So.
I don't know, what do you remember about the kindness? Like, what are the things that stick out to you?
Man, I think like, because when I left Kansas City, I swore I was never going to move back to Kansas City, right?
Amen to that.
Right? And
and here we are.
And I think that was probably the catalyst for like really figuring out that like the heartland America is one of the best places to live just because of the kindness of the people. We saw that with the Patriot Guard. We saw that throughout Jeremy's funeral with, people just bent over backwards to accommodate you and Everett and
the
rest
Rangers
of
that came in town.
Yeah, the Rangers that came
Oh
in
my
town.
God.
Yeah. And so that's one thing that I definitely remember from all of the tragedy that happened with Jeremy. And but yeah, that I'm curious, and this is a little bit of an abstract question for you, but like looking back on it now, almost 12 years from when all of these terrible things happened, what perspective did you gain out of that tragedy?
I think that is very much where I started, all that love and support and outpouring was the America that Jeremy fought for and died.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to see all that beauty and kindness, I very much clung to my faith in the way that knowing it's not fair that Jeremy died, I get to be angry about it.
Yeah.
But I also very much get to choose who I want to be from that point forward. In the essence of like, do I want to be a really bitter, angry person at 26? I was 26 when he died. I was younger then than you are now. You know what I mean? Like,
you're a baby.
26, like, do I want to live the rest of my life angry and bitter? Or do I want to take all this love and support and the orchestration that God did put in place for me and just continue to do the best I could? And that was very much a daily mantra for me, because there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed.
Yeah.
Where like I didn't want a mom. But like Jeremy and I had prayed to be parents. We had like we really wanted that, and I wanted to be a mom. And like sure, the other piece of it was missing, but like I don't know, like I remember coming home on that flight from the funeral thinking to myself, my next step is to be a mom. I might not know anything else, but Jeremy believed in this country enough to die for it. And so I'm going to believe in our love enough to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Like,
so knowing how things transpired after that, how did this affect your working habits? Like, where did you
well, and so like saying that, like knowing that when I landed, being a mom was my next big step. But man, I look back on it now and damn, I was broken.
Yeah.
Like I could wake up and put a smile on my face, but my heart was, ugh.
Yeah.
And I was lost.
Yeah.
I will often say when you bury your husband at 26, you bury a lot more than just your husband.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a brand new thriving career as a labor and delivery nurse. I was working on my master's. I wanted nothing more than to be a women's health nurse practitioner. Loved being a nurse. Touched down from the funeral and no longer felt like I could be a nurse. And, I also, like, that part was really hard for me. But then on top of that, there was that part, like, the other thing I grieved that was really hard for me was Jeremy and I wanted 3 to 4 kids. Like, we wanted a big family. We're both came from families with 4 kids. And, I'd, like, be in the grocery store with Everett at 9, 10 months old. And the little old women would want to know when I'm going to have another. And I literally would just look at them with this blank stare, not knowing how to answer that.
Yeah.
Because I want to be like, well, my husband died. I can't, like that brokenness.
So is that part of why you decided you couldn't be a labor and delivery nurse anymore?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think that if I had gone back and tried to deliver babies, I would have been really, really bitter.
Okay, so now that we've covered Colleen's life story and tragedy, so tell me about, like,
wasn't enough to have to live with it, huh? As
Yeah.
my brother.
Yeah.
Now you get to interview me about it.
I know, yeah. So you take a hiatus from nursing. That you went, what, 2 or 3 years without working after that?
I didn't go back to work till he was in kindergarten.
So
5 years.
5 years, yeah. So you went back to school during a portion of this, which is where Folds of Honor comes back into the conversation.
Yeah. So in the grief, I always say that grief takes time. And people that try to rush it, it just comes back and bites them in the ass, really.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful I had time on my side in that essence to really figure it out. So in that, I moved back to Kansas City to be close to family. You had been transferred, and so like all the things, you know. And that first winter that I moved back, kept saying on the news, worst winter in 27 years or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done?
That is Kansas City. It's definitely a little worse for
right?
the weather.
And Everett started a really awesome preschool program where he was in preschool for a full day, 2 days a week. And that's right. But I remember just being lost. Like somehow having the foresight that Everett was going to, the time was going so quickly already, he was going to be 18 and out of the house in no time. Mm-hmm. And then what?
Yeah.
I don't, then what? Kept being kind of my thought. I just kept wondering what's next. And so there was a cold January day or something, and I'm mopping the floors while Everett naps, because I don't know, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need a job.
Yeah.
I need a job. I need a career. I need more than just a job. I need a career again, because I really did love working.
Yeah.
But nursing just didn't seem right again. And so I was thinking of careers that I could balance being a single mom and having a career.
Yeah.
I landed on teaching.
Yep.
Because our mom was a teacher.
Yep.
She could balance motherhood and teaching pretty well. And I was like, but the idea of 25 8-year-olds in the classroom, I was like, oh my God, no thank you.
Yeah.
Those people are saints. So then I was like, well, I could go back and teach high school. I loved high school. I had a great experience in high school. But then I was like, oh my God, I saw that movie Dangerous Minds. And Michelle Pfeiffer was an ex-Marine, and I'm no ex-Marine. No. They will eat me alive. And so I got this crazy idea to go back to school. Reached out to Longnecker, a good mentor to both Patrick and I, and he told me about the master's program at Rockhurst University. So I look into it, and it's nice because they had a master's of education for people whose bachelor's was in something else. So I do all the things, I enroll, I start that fall, 2014, and I was so excited. It was my first real decision for me. And that first semester I got started, and I had some GI Bill benefits and things of that sort. But man, it ended up being a lot more expensive. Yeah. The way my GI Bill worked at the time was that I got a monthly check. Yeah. Well, tuition's due at the beginning of the semester. Yeah. And so I just was like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And I got connected with Folds of Honor, and I was ready to quit. And then Folds of Honor came in and gave me a scholarship for that spring semester.
How did you get linked up with Folds of Honor?
So it's kind of a Dan Rooney, our founder of Folds. He talks a lot about this idea of synchronicity. Yeah. And Christy Graham. Mm-hmm. So the Grahams were a family that we both knew from Savannah, and he was at Leavenworth for the War College. And so Christy and I were hanging out, the kids were playing, I was talking to her, and she knew a lady, Lisa Hallett, that's also on the Speakers Bureau for Folds, and she'd gone to an event with Christy. So then Christy and I are talking about it, and Christy was like, well, have you heard of Folds of Honor? And I said, no. Well, at the same time, our friend Lindsay Shively is doing that the withdrawal from Afghanistan story, her first one. And that...
It was the 10-year...
Well, it was when we were initially pulling out of Afghanistan.
Was it?
Yeah. Goodbye. She did a follow-up when we're actually leaving Afghanistan. 6 years later.
But it was an anniversary, 20 years.
No, because that one she involved you in it.
Well, 20 years would have been 2021, so I guess that would have been too late, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, so then that got seen, and so they gave me a scholarship and invited me to be part of their speakers bureau. And so I did.
Yep.
Like, where do you want to go with this?
Yeah.
I'm already talking too much.
Yeah.
How charged is your battery?
Yeah. No, I think we just need to figure out, like, we got the gist of Folds of Honor. Now we just need to figure out how to wrap it up. For our audience, we're doing the Give Back program. Basically, we give customers the option. It says donate a pound of ground beef to Folds. We're letting Folds pick their meat, so we equate it to a dollar value. We're running that for the next 6 months. Yeah, next 6 months. What else do you want our customer base to know about Folds of Honor that you think would be beneficial?
So I think this is the thing about Folds of Honor is people are like, it's a scholarship.
Yeah.
And there's lots of scholarships out there, which is true to a certain extent. But Folds of Honor is also very much a community. Mm-hmm. And Folds of Honor taught me to own my story at a time where I felt isolated and alone. And I think of it now, and there's so many pieces of it, of like, man, if I had quit that first semester and hadn't become a teacher, whew, I don't even know who I would be.
Yeah.
And even as a mom, like, Everett has been able to grow up in these events where people honor our military and they continue to talk about Jeremy, and like just this beautiful community that constantly reminds me of what Jeremy fought and died for, right? And so there's that piece that when people are like, well, it's just $1 for beef, you're like, yeah, but that $1 for beef goes to this fundraising event that then funds scholarships that gives people hope, and like helps them pull together their story. Because I think oftentimes when you have this major life event, whether it's unfortunately somebody pays the ultimate sacrifice or they're severely injured, the biggest thing is like rewriting your story.
Yeah.
And that's what the scholarship did for me, and the community has done for Everett, is it's written our story in a very beautiful way that allows us to keep going. And I have met children of fallen service members that I look at them and their stories are beautiful, and I meet other spouses, and it continues to be a story of love and hope, love from strangers and hope. So it's like that $1 for beef.
Yeah.
That people might just be like, it's $1 for beef. And I'm like, yeah, but man, that was my hope line.
Yeah.
That's my constant reminder of what Jeremy died for.
Yeah, well, we work with a ton of military nonprofits, and a lot of them do amazing things within the veteran community. But one place I would say is underserved is the Gold Star community, right? And it's a place that shouldn't be. I mean, Gold Star families have paid more of a sacrifice than I will go as far to say is all veterans, right, that are still here on this earth. And the struggles they carry are just not comparable to anything else. And so I've always been very impressed with what Folds of Honor does, what their mission is, and the way they step in at a time to fulfill a need when you probably do need some type of change in your life trajectory to get back on track from something that's awful and terrible. And so with that being said, do you have anything else you want to tell our audience before we sign off? Cameron's like, dude, you guys have been talking forever, and
I would be like, we really can be funny. Mm-hmm. Just not when we're talking about my dead husband, I guess.
No. This is not funny.
It's not funny.
Should we put that in a bloopers reel? No.
That's the opener.
Well, guys, one time Colleen came up to an employee and asked for the dead husband discount.
I put it in the comment line of the order.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Put it in the comment line. I thought we were there.
Yeah.
Obviously, we weren't there yet.
Not there yet.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well,
why do you pick Folds to be your charity?
I think it's kind of what I, went through there is there's a ton of really awesome veteran nonprofits, but I'm of the mindset that I really believe it's important to give people the tools to take tragedy and things that could potentially make you a worse person, and give them the tools to help gain the perspective of, hey, this is something that if I look at it correctly, can turn me into an amazing human being. And I think Folds does that with their scholarship opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that I choose to support them with this give back.
Well, thanks, dude.
Yeah, man. Till next time, we'll have you on for a longer one. Cameron's like, oh gosh.
Can I tell my favorite story about you and our grief process?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I so specifically remember this as the first time I laughed after Jeremy died. You know where I'm going with this, don't you?
Is it the ice cubes?
No, the eyebrow.
Oh God, yeah. All right, you're gonna tell this on camera.
I'm gonna tell it well. So Patrick's bedroom was upstairs along with my office area, and I'm working on my computer because that's when desktops were still the main form of computers. But Patrick's in the bathroom doing his male grooming, which I don't even know what that means. And all of a sudden I hear a very girlish scream from Patrick in the bathroom. And he comes running into the bedroom at my office and he's like, "You can fix this, right?" And he's missing his entire eyebrow. You didn't have your entire eyebrow.
Yeah.
He just looked at you and I was like, "No, I can't fix that." But it was just that. It was a really funny memory because.
Well, you're welcome for that.
Thank you. So it's really why you shaved it off, right?
It grew back.
Yeah, it did. It did. But you looked really. You shaved off the other one, didn't you? So they were even. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You looked so weird.
Yeah, thank you.
So weird.
Well, I had to shave my head the next day too to go to Ranger school. So
that's right.
Take it all off.
Yeah, but I just think that's the black cloud of grief, though. It was I really, and I mean, we like to laugh.
Yeah.
But I didn't for a long time.
Yeah, heard that.
And I wore all black. Do you remember that?
Yeah, you cut your hair short.
Well, it was already short.
Yeah.
And then I swore I'd never be that short again,
Yeah.
remember?
All right. Should we say anything else to wrap this up? I feel like our ending was pretty terrible.
Hats off to you for making this, though.
Thank you.
Jeremy would be really proud. I think you would think Casey Cattle's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Although the man couldn't cook a steak for the life of him. But I bet he could now.
Yeah.
I bet you would teach him.
Yeah.
But appreciate it that you're supporting Folds.
Yeah. It's our pleasure, and we wish Jeremy was here doing it with us. So, yeah.
So buy beef and support Folds at the same time.
You said everything I needed to say. Thank you guys for listening to this, and hopefully Cameron can cut this into something better.
Work your magic. Hey, buddy.